In America, someone files for bankruptcy every 30 seconds. By the time you finish watching this video, 10 more families will have lost everything. These aren't the people you might expect. They're your neighbors, your coworkers, maybe even your family members. Let me tell you about John and Lisa Miller from Michigan. They earn $82,000 a year, right in the middle class. John works as a high school teacher, Lisa as a dental assistant. They have 2 kids, a small house with a mortgage, and until last year, they were doing okay. Then their son got diagnosed with diabetes. Even with insurance, the monthly costs hit $1,000. Their savings disappeared. Credit card bills piled up. Now they're facing a choice no family should have to make: pay for their son's medicine or keep their house. The scary part: nearly 60% of Americans are just one paycheck away from falling into the same trap. A recent Federal Reserve study found that 40% of Americans can't handle a surprise $400 bill without going into debt. Think about that. $400 is all it takes to start the downward spiral. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why this is happening. We'll start with the biggest killer of family finances: medical bills. Did you know medical debt is now the #1 reason people go bankrupt in America? Then we'll look at the other forces crushing the middle class: housing costs that eat half your paycheck, college loans that never seem to end, and prices that keep going up while paychecks stay the same. This isn't just another video about money problems. This is a wake-up call about a crisis that's getting worse every day. And if you stick with me, you might just learn how to protect yourself and your family from becoming another statistic. Medical bills are destroying middle-class families in America. Here's a scary fact: 2 out of 3 people who go bankrupt do it because of medical bills. Want to know something even scarier? Most of these people, more than 75%, actually had health insurance when they got sick. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. The numbers are shocking. A family now pays about $22,000 a year just for health insurance. That's like buying a new car every year. But there's something even worse: deductibles. Back in 2000, you might have paid $500 before insurance would help. Now, many families must pay $5,000 or even $8,000 out of their own pocket before insurance kicks in. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. Your kid breaks their arm playing baseball. You rush to the emergency room, feeling relieved because you have insurance. Then the bills start coming: $3,000 for the emergency room, $500 for x-rays, $7,000 for surgery, and $2,000 for therapy afterward. That adds up to $12,500. Remember that $5,000 deductible. You have to pay all of that first, and then you still have to pay 20% of everything else. Middle-class families are caught in the middle. They make too much money to get government help, but not enough to handle these huge bills. If someone gets really sick, like cancer, the bills can hit $100,000 or more, even with insurance. This isn't just about big emergencies either. 1 in every 4 Americans is now skipping doctor visits because they cost too much. People are using less insulin than they need, putting off cancer checks, or just living with pain, all because they're afraid of the bills. You think about that, in the richest country in the world, regular families have to choose between their health and their savings. Remember John and Lisa Miller from our introduction. Their son's diabetes medicine costs $1,000 every month, even with insurance. No wonder their savings disappeared. They're not alone. Millions of middle-class families are just one medical emergency away from financial disaster. And sadly, this healthcare crisis is just the beginning of the problems facing middle-class Americans today. After seeing how medical bills are crushing families, there's another huge problem making things worse: the cost of having a place to live. Back in 1980, you could buy a house for about $47,200, and families made around $17,710 a year. Today, houses cost about $410,000, but families only make around $70,784 a year. Our paychecks simply haven't grown enough to keep up with these huge home prices. Let me break this down in simple terms. The old rule said your monthly house payment should be no more than 30% of your money after taxes. But today, middle-class families are spending almost half their money just on housing. And that's if they can buy a house at all. Most banks want at least $40,000 as a down payment for an average house. For many families, saving that much money is impossible, so they're stuck renting, where prices are even higher. But here's the thing. Buying a house is just the beginning of your money troubles. Property taxes keep going up every year. Let's look at a real example. A family in New Jersey bought their house for $300,000 in 2012. Back then, they paid $6,000 a year in property taxes. Now, they're paying $12,000. That's an extra $500 every month they didn't plan for. Then come the surprise costs that every homeowner faces. Your roof starts leaking? That's $15,000 to fix. Water heater dies. $1,200. Air conditioning breaks in summer. $5,000 more. These aren't fancy upgrades, these are must-fix problems. And remember those medical bills we talked about earlier? They've already eaten up any savings these families had. We all remember what happened in 2008 when the housing market crashed and millions of people lost their homes. But here's the scary part. Middle-class families today are actually in a worse position. House prices are higher, interest rates are up, and paychecks still aren't growing. It's just one problem, like missing a paycheck, a broken furnace, or a trip to the emergency room, can start a chain reaction that ends with families losing their homes. You think about the Miller family from earlier, already struggling with their son's diabetes costs. Now imagine their roof starts leaking. With their savings gone to medical bills, where will they find $15,000 for a new roof? This is the impossible math problem that middle-class families face every day. And we haven't even talked about the next big problem yet, the crushing weight of student loans. The college cost crisis is crushing an entire generation of middle-class families. Back in 1980, college cost about $3,200 a year. Today, it's $35,800 per year at public universities. And private colleges cost even more, over $60,000 a year. The worst part, most good jobs still require college degrees, so families have no choice but to pay these huge prices. This has created a terrible trap. Parents who are still paying off their own college loans from 20 years ago now have to take out new loans for their kids. Just think about those numbers. The average student loan payment is $460 per month. In many families, both parents are making loan payments plus taking out new loans for their kids. That's 3 or 4 college loans hitting one family's bank account every month. The government offers something called Parent Plus loans to help families pay for college. But these loans are dangerous. They have high interest rates and no limits on how much parents can borrow. Many parents end up taking out $100,000 or more in loans for each child. That's on top of their mortgage, medical bills, and their own student loans. All this college debt is destroying people's retirement savings. Instead of saving money for their future, parents are emptying their retirement accounts to pay for college. A new study shows that 45% of middle-class families have saved nothing for retirement, $0. They're forced to choose between their children's education and their own future. Here's what makes this so unfair. Middle-class families make too much money to get good financial aid, but not enough to pay these huge college bills without loans. Just like with medical costs and housing, they're stuck in the middle. And unlike other loans, student debt never goes away, even if you declare bankruptcy. That's why we're seeing people in their 50s and 60s still making student loan payments when they should be getting ready to retire. This mountain of education debt, combined with the medical bills and housing costs we talked about earlier, is pushing many middle-class families to the edge. And now, a new problem is making everything even harder to handle: inflation. Inflation has turned every grocery store visit into a painful reminder of how prices keep climbing. Let's look at real numbers. Since 2021, food prices have jumped 20%. A cart of groceries that cost $200 back then now costs $300. Basic items tell the story. Eggs went from $2 to $5 a dozen, milk jumped from $3.50 to nearly $5, and bread rose from $2.50 to $4. The government says the average family is spending $400 more on groceries every month compared to 2 years ago. But food is just the start. Utility bills are hitting record highs across America. The typical electric bill has shot up 40% in many areas, going from $150 to $225 monthly. Gas and water bills are up too, adding another $100 to monthly costs. When you add it all up, keeping the lights on and food on the table costs families $700 more every month than it did 2 years ago. That's $8,400 more per year, but most people's paychecks haven't grown at all. Transportation costs are another big hit to family budgets. Even though gas prices go up and down, they're still much higher than before. A family with 2 cars now spends about $400 monthly just on gas. Car maintenance costs more too. New tires now cost $800 instead of $500, and basic oil changes jumped from $45 to $75. The biggest shock: childcare costs. New numbers show the average price for one child in daycare is now $14,000 a year. That's more than many families pay for their mortgage. With 2 kids needing care, some parents are paying $30,000 yearly just so they can go to work. In fact, 3 out of 10 parents say they're spending more than half their paycheck just on childcare. Remember those medical bills, mortgage payments, and student loans we talked about? They haven't gone away. But now, with basic living costs eating up more of each paycheck, middle-class families are turning to their last resort, credit cards. And that's where our next problem begins. When the bills pile up and the paycheck runs out, credit cards seem like an easy fix. But these small pieces of plastic have become a deadly trap for middle-class families. Recent data shows that American credit card debt has hit a record high of $1.13 trillion, with the average family carrying $7,951 in credit card debt. Here's how the trap works. Your car needs a $500 repair, but your savings are gone because of all those rising costs we talked about. So you put it on a credit card, thinking you'll pay it off next month. But next month, your electric bill is higher than expected. You can only make the minimum payment, about $25. What most people don't realize is that with today's average credit card interest rate of 24%, that $500 repair will end up costing over $800 if you only make minimum payments. The cycle gets worse each month. A medical bill here, some groceries there, maybe your kids' school supplies. Soon you're juggling multiple cards. The average middle-class family now puts $400 of basic living expenses on credit cards every month just to get by. That's not luxury spending, that's food, gas, and necessities. The numbers are brutal. If you have $5,000 in credit card debt and only make minimum payments, you'll end up paying over $7,000 in interest alone, and it'll take you 15 years to pay it off. For many families, credit cards have become a second mortgage, except with much higher interest rates. This debt trap, combined with all the other pressures we've talked about, medical bills, housing costs, student loans, and inflation, explains why so many middle-class families are just one emergency away from bankruptcy. But there are some ways to protect yourself, which brings us to our final section. While the problems facing the middle class are huge, there are steps you can take to protect yourself and your family. First, let's talk about what's already working. Some states have started free financial coaching programs. For example, in Michigan, families who joined these programs were 50% less likely to face bankruptcy. You can find similar free help at many local credit unions. The government is also making some changes. New medical debt laws mean that starting in 2024, medical bills under $500 won't hurt your credit score anymore. Several states have put caps on insulin prices, limiting costs to $35 per month. And there's growing support for making these caps nationwide for other life-saving drugs too. For your personal protection, start with the 50-30-20 rule. It's simple but powerful. Put 50% of your money toward needs, housing, food, utilities, 30% toward wants, and 20% toward savings and debt payment. Can't hit these numbers. Even saving 5% of each paycheck in an emergency fund can prevent a surprise bill from turning into a crisis. Look for community help too. Many hospitals have financial aid programs, even for middle-class families, but they don't advertise them. You have to ask. Local food banks now serve many middle-class families. Churches and community centers often offer free childcare. The key is to ask for help before a problem becomes a crisis. Most importantly, remember this: if you're struggling, you're not alone. Millions of middle-class families face these same challenges. The solution isn't just personal. We need bigger changes to fix healthcare, housing, and education. But until those changes come, using these resources and strategies can help keep your family financially stable. The middle class in America is facing its biggest fight ever. But here's what gives me hope. Every big change in history started when regular people said enough is enough. We've spent the last few minutes uncovering how medical bills are bankrupting families, how homes have become unaffordable, how college loans are crushing parents and kids, and how rising prices are squeezing every last dollar from our paychecks. But here's the good news: things are starting to change. Just last year, 3 major hospitals canceled $150 million in medical debt after people spoke up. Companies are raising wages because workers demanded better pay. And for the first time, both political parties are talking about fixing childcare costs and college debt because they're finally hearing our voices. If you're watching this and struggling, you're not alone. And there's help out there. Here are 3 things you can do right now. Call 211 on your phone. It's a free hotline that connects you to local help. Visit consumerfinance.gov for free tools to fight back against debt collectors. Join local Facebook groups where families share money-saving tips and support each other. But the most powerful thing you can do, share this video. Share it with your family, your friends, your coworkers. Because when more people understand what's really happening to the middle class, more people will demand change. And when millions of voices speak up together, even the strongest systems have to listen. Remember, the middle class built this country. We built the roads, the schools, the businesses. And if we stand together, we can rebuild the American dream, not just for ourselves, but for our kids and their kids too. The wake-up call isn't just coming, it's here. And it starts with you.